Okay, welcome to Fintech Family Hour, everybody. We have two of my favorites. We have Dimitri Dadiomov. I really want to introduce you for a fight someday, Dimitri. Or please, if you ever get into that point, just make sure that I'm on that list. And we have Matt Marcus, both from Modern Treasury, one of my favorite companies in the space, doing some of my favorite things. How are you doing today, fellas? Dimitri, have we gotten into any fights yet, or my dreams coming true?
We're working on it. I'm doing well. We'll see how long. It's only in the morning right now, so we'll see how long it takes before we get into a fight. But it's good. It's good to be here.
We'll sign you fighting Zuckerberg too. One day, MMA.
I like that idea. If you had to pick, Dimitri, would you fight? Would you, if it was a jiu-jitsu situation, because we would never, strike anyone with our hands. Would you pick Elon or Zuck if you had to pick one to jiu-jitsu?
Oh man, am I trying to win or am I trying to what am I trying to get out of
trying
this?
To gain Twitter followers. No, you're trying to win.
No. I think I'd probably rather fight Zuck.
I think we all would at the end of the day. Yes. All right, so that was not on the list of things that we were planning to talk about today, but that's how this happens. So we have these two guys here. Dimitri, last time I saw you, I think in person, we were on stage in Vegas, and I was breaking a light bulb with Paul Verzi and showering it all over.
We fought a chandelier.
And who won that fight?
Not us.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the answer is the chandelier. I was in Vegas a few weeks ago, and it has been replaced, and I do not believe that anyone was ever billed thereon. So I think maybe we did win, actually, in our own way.
Yeah.
There you go.
Made memories.
If nothing else, we definitely made memories. Matt Marcus, my friend, last time I saw you, I think we were V-summing. We were doing virtual events together. It's maybe been like a year, 2 years. How long's it been, man?
Maybe a year or something like that. I swear I exist in person though, so I'll see you later this year again in the flesh.
Have we have met in person, right?
We have. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say it all post-COVID, it all just kind of comes together in a very weird soup of confusion. But anyway, speaking of COVID, in terms of being on this podcast, I believe, well, I mean, not really speaking of COVID, but speaking of hard things, last time that you were on this podcast, Dimitri, I think we were doing kind of a retrospective on SVB and just the banking crisis and everything. So this is a super broad, wide question, but how have things been at MT since then? How have you been since then? Catch us up on life, and that can come from both of your perspectives, or one, or either way. This is the beauty of the non-directed podcast host that you have here.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We started the company in 2018. I feel like it's one of those things where every year there's something completely different and new that we didn't expect or didn't know we should be preparing for, and the 2023, I guess, version of that was definitely like the string of bank failures, which, given what we do, definitely has an effect on us. And so that was that was really dominating Q1, Q2 of last year. I think the big thing that maybe happened this past year is, and a lot of companies have been really focused on it, is just all the new innovations coming out around AI and things like that. And so a lot of in some ways, it feels a little bit healthier, I think, where the past 12 months we've been much more focused on product and technology and serving customers and coming up with cool ideas and showing demos and things that startups should be doing, as opposed to worrying about, Fed policy around, bank rescues and things like that. So it's been a good year, and we're excited to kind of get into it.
Yeah, Matt, it sounds like on the product side, there's a lot that is coming about. Sounds like there's some new products on the horizon. One of the things that I saw come across was, and I'm wondering if the proper term is reconciliation as a product or reconciliation as a service or reconciliation as a what. But tell us a little bit about that. That was something that Chris sent across before.
Yeah. Well, I want to avoid putting out another as a service into the lexicon, so we'll avoid that one. But reconciliation's an area we've always helped our customers with. So when we think about moving money, when you send someone a payment and then all the stuff happens downstream, they post your bank statement, you get a return, you need to understand what happened. And so we've always had reconciliation out of the box for money movement. But I think, as we've gotten bigger, as our customers have gotten bigger, as we've seen the pain points they have more, we realized that that reconciliation part of the product is something that can be broadly used by a wider set of customers. And so over the last year, we've really been investing in splitting that out as its own product that can be used by anybody, even if they don't move money with us, just because every company that moves money, especially the ones at scale or with complexity, struggles with reconciliation. And oftentimes they don't think about it until it's too late. Too late meaning they've lost a ton of money, or they can't go public, or they fail their audit, or they can't build new products. And so the impact's pretty high. So that's a big area of investment for us. Dimitri mentioned AI. That's something we've been thinking a lot about embedding into the product. You know, with financial products, you need to do it the right way. So nobody wants a co-pilot or an AI just closing their books for them, or closing out the balance of their FBO account. That's not how it works. But there is a lot of manual work in the world of reconciliation. And so when we think about creating workflows and tools that are fast and easy to use, or things that augment those workflows, that's a place where we've been embedding AI. And I think a difference from a year ago, irrespective of SVB, is just, this is more related to this ChatGPT moment, is that people are open to using AI. And I think a year or two ago, that wasn't really the case. And it's because they've seen it in their everyday lives. And so that means that people who might not be like tech early adopters are open to adopting and innovating. So, you know, that's a big part, AI, and that comes into the workflow and exception management side of things. But we also have this reconciliation engine and system built on the back of all the payments that we've handled for our customers over the last 6 years or so. And so we really focused on splitting that out and making that accessible to our customers and future customers for automatic reconciliation, which really puts these things on autopilot and helps them scale their business the right way.
So we have a lot of nerds listening to the podcast, or else it wouldn't exist. Nonetheless, I have a need to define terms that we use very often in this industry that I feel like if you were to like put the average like you're walking down walking down the hallway at Money 2020, you're like, hey, what's reconciliation? Give me a 30-second description of it right now. I think a lot of people would actually probably like, they could probably do like a 2-sentence like, well, a thing goes in and then you got to make sure that the thing went in, and then if the thing went out, you got to make sure the thing went out, and then at the end of the day, it's got to reconcile or something like that, like some very overly simplistic version. But y'all are a lot smarter, and y'all have built a product around it. So can you define reconciliation in terms of, I guess, specifically in the payment arena for us?
Yeah. It is a debate here on what the best definition is too. So I think it's one of those things where you know it when you see it, but you have a hard time maybe defining it. At a high level, it's understanding every dollar in your bank account, both in terms of every transaction and the overall balance. And that can be your bank account, it can be your credit card processor, your card issuer, whoever it is. And this is a specific type of reconciliation. It's the one that we see the companies that we work with, the ones that move really a lot of money through a lot of transactions. That's the problem they're dealing with. It's upstream from another reconciliation or set of problems around like monthly close and accounting. And so this is that process related to, the FBO you have, or the cards that you issue, or whatever it might be. And so, at a high level, I think those are roughly the two jobs to be done. One is, can you understand all the money that you have in your business? And the second one is, can you look at every line item on your bank statement, on your card issuing statement, whatever it is, and say, I know why this happened. Here's the reason it happened, and here's the corresponding entry in my ledger. And most people can't get that, or they get it at a high level, but they don't get it at the line item level. And that's really what we've been focused on delivering, is that like fully automatic and then exception-based workflow for line item level reconciliation, which is, I would say, pretty state of the art for fintechs or non-fintechs, just with a lot of money moving.
Yeah, how much is it focused on? I mean, based on the fact that you're kind of talking about, unbundling one of your own products almost and kind of making it available standalone, how much is it focused on fintech? How much is it focused on, a brand that is doing money movement oriented things? Make that just as generic as I can.
Yeah. I always feel like we've used slightly different vocabulary than the broader like embedded finance, banking as a service space, or whatever you want to bucket it. So when we think about our customers, it's any company in the economy that just moves a lot of money. And so that when we look at the industries, that's like real estate and healthcare and education, these payroll companies, they're construction companies, like, you kind of span the whole gamut. And then you have vertical software companies who are embedding payments into their product. You have various banking products, et cetera. And a lot of these companies, you would go to them and they would not describe themselves as fintech companies. These are companies that in some cases have been around longer than our grandparents have been. And they just move a lot of money by the virtue of their business. And so they're really thinking about modernizing and like bringing technology into operations and moving off of spreadsheets or mainframe-based systems. We hear the word mainframe used non-ironically in our prospect and customer calls pretty often. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, and so I think that's a really big opportunity because those are the types of companies that actually, impact a lot of people at scale and have very real products and businesses that are servicing people on a daily basis. And so, it's a combination of that, and then of course there's the innovation and the companies that are bringing new products to market, and those again span pretty much every type of company and industry.
I think one thing that it also sort of, an additional challenge to this world is like maybe you've had your mainframe running for 30, 40, 50 years and it's been fine and it's not been a big deal. But there's a lot of things that are changing in the world right now. So all of a sudden, the web is messing with these industries, like the industries that Matt mentioned. A lot of them were not in the first wave of internet innovation, right? Like they're kind of like now starting to be really affected and changed and disrupted. And so all of a sudden you have, websites you can get mortgages over, websites you can go like buy a house over and buy a car, things that are just not something that you did like 20 years ago. And then the other piece is with FedNow and real-time payments and things like that, all of a sudden, like reconciliation is important, but a lot of times people think about it as like a month-end close kind of thing. But in this case, it has to be real time. So you're going to have to do it more or less instantly, or like as real time as that payment rail allows. And so all of a sudden you kind of have to have item level reconciliation that's more real time, and on top of it, like connected to some sort of software system. And it's just kind of appending this whole, world that has been working mostly fine with like mainframes and batch-based systems. And it's going to only get like more so. I mean, I think like as FedNow and RTP and cards and things start affecting some of these industries, we're going to see like a lot of innovation. And so that's, I think, going to necessitate a lot of these changes, and item level recon is really important for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of like the fintech companies and kind of thinking about that dividing line between the two, if that's, fintech companies versus a construction company or whatever it is. But I love the way that there's something about when Dimitri says website that just makes me like really yearn for the 90s. I don't know what it is. Just like, I just want to go watch some Friends or some Seinfeld or something every time you say website. And your way of talking about these things is so simplistic because you're trying to explain something wildly complicated, and it just always warms my heart. That's a totally random aside. But anyways, to Matt's earlier point, and this is a question to you, Dimitri, and then Matt, if you have anything to add on, definitely jump in. MT as a organization, right? Like Modern Treasury, where it started versus where it's going and where it is today, how much of the focus is on that fintech side, right? And how much of the focus is on the other side, whatever we want to call it? And how do you see the general like industry kind of shaping around that, I guess, is the broader thing. But specifically to MT, I'm curious.
Yeah, I think fintech is this loaded term that has a lot of different things that kind of within it. So it's hard for us to say is a company that's been around for 100 years and is actually starting to do these like embedded kind of finance use cases. Is that a fintech company or not? Or is it like a legacy company kind of disrupting itself? It's the same use case at the end of the day. Same technology is required for that, but maybe more volume, probably different banks. I think there's a lot of changes that are happening in the industry where the companies that are innovating are sort of being sorted out by like what banks are working with and what types and what scale of like use case the financial services industry wants to be serving. And so fundamentally, you hear a lot of companies when they're starting out having a harder time going to work with like the bigger banks, and then the biggest banks really aiming for the big companies and kind of creating these. So I think there is, I think like 3,000 banks in the US. That's a lot of complexity that just like is all over the place. And you can kind of build, infrastructure and services companies, which is ultimately what like Modern Treasury is. that are focused on different segments of that. And so we've always kind of thought about ourselves as general purpose software as can be, but really focused on like the biggest use cases. And so that doesn't tend to be like strictly a fintech thing. Like that actually tends to be a broader thing. There's been a lot of let's add a debit card to like every use case kind of innovation. And like we haven't focused as much on that because it always felt to us a little bit more niche-y. Like not that to say there's not going to be like huge venture successes in that, but it's not going to be like every single product using it. And so, yeah, so I think the way you described, like in some ways we're unbundling our own software and saying like, here's your payment flow. You can initiate payments, you can approve them, you can kind of do the payments piece. Here's the ledger. You can use a ledger database by itself. If you move a lot of money, you should track it. That's basically the product premise behind it. And then reconciliation now being sort of like a third leg of the stool where it's like, hey, like if you have bank statements and you have ledgers, there's this other thing that you're going to have to reconcile it with. And that can be data coming from the healthcare world, data coming from the real estate world. Like there's some other system that you're trying to basically match it all with. And, we're trying to be as good as can be at reconciling two sets of like line items. And, that's like the most general way to describe what we're trying to build.
Dimitri nailed it.
Yeah, he nailed it. Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
I don't need to take a...
It's actually, so thinking about the unbundling of your own product, I don't think I really have a question associated with this, but it's very interesting to me to hear some of this based on my previous life working in the term that shall mostly remain unsaid these days, banking as a service. We're repainting that under a new guise now. But thinking about building that product and being inside that organization, there was a question of like, how do we build settlement? Do we build it in-house? We have to build it in-house. I don't see any other options. How do we do reconciliation? How do we do this? How do we do that? Everything all the way to card printing. And there's certain things that, y'all ain't going to solve card printing, I don't think. But we can skate out 100 years, see what happens, but not in the next few decades. But the idea that you're solving reconciliation, the idea that you're unbundling a lot of this, I think makes a lot of sense in the construction piece, but it also makes a ton of sense in terms of like providing infrastructure for other infrastructure based on the way that our world seems to be coming together. So I think there's versions of this that got like built in house at different organizations, be they the construction company or, an embedded finance company that's trying to run quick or thinks that it's IP or something like that, which actually I say that sarcastically and y'all have actually turned it into IP, which is hilarious. But it's just interesting that this is where the industry is getting to now when you see these consent orders flying in the banking as a service space and everything else. And the other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking is like, y'all have been doing like, I think there's been a lot of drama in the space recently and some interesting things going on, but y'all are almost like one of the only players in the space that's like probably Jason Mikula approved, right? Like you're actually just like doing the damn thing direct to bank. If there is any sort of thing indirect, it's just direct. And y'all have been doing it since the beginning and just thinking of yourself as a provider in that way from the start. So it's hilarious to me how like calm the waters are in your world at the same time. Actually, it's just, hilarious is maybe the wrong term considering what's going on around the rest of the industry, but we'll have to keep them crying. I don't know. I guess I just applaud it, I suppose, is what I'm doing at the moment with my mouth.
Well, one thing that's so super interesting, you mentioned like that people build this internally. I think the word build can mean different things. And one of the things that we've seen a lot is we've started to work with bigger companies and more, legacy companies, is some, when we say build, we think like, okay, you have an in-house engineering team, you like assign like 3, 20-something-year-old engineers to go figure this out. And like they go read the documentation, go start building the stuff. That's what we think of build when we think about tech companies. A lot of times when big kind of old school companies say the word build, what they mean is they build like a cubicle farm with like humans who are doing things by hand and they're moving things around and there's spreadsheets flying around and somebody's like digging in the spreadsheet from last Tuesday to like answer the question. And I think that's something that we've realized a lot of those types of companies actually need help kind of building in a more technical way. And so we actually launched a professional services offering. So kind of going even a little bit step further into the unbundling piece, we now have clients who pay us not just to use our software. That's obviously like a part of what they're buying, but a part of what they're buying is also like, we're going to help them actually like use our software. Like we're actually going to like write API calls to ourselves. And in the process, and I'm sure Matt can speak to it, like we're improving our own product because we're actually using it in a way that all of our clients have been for a few years. And now we're actually using it ourselves as well. And we're actually improving it. But fundamentally, I think that's something that in order for this product to be viable by these companies that are a little bit more, and the, a lot of times people in Silicon Valley will say this company is slow moving. Well, it's not really slow moving. It's like moving at, there's a huge mass that it's like turning around. So when you actually try to like get it to do something new in a new process, like there's a huge change management process around it. There's like new trainings, there's more, banks involved. There's more like they have to, report to the street. So like, to the AI point, like you probably don't want hallucinations there. Like so you got to have some guardrails around some of these things. And so it's in that unbundling sense, like we're sort of helping build the thing that builds to us as a service, I suppose. But we're launching a professional services piece, and so that's also helping companies be able to use Modern Treasury more.
Yeah, I think like one of the fundamental beliefs we have is just that every company wants to innovate, which sounds like a statement everyone should agree with, but we find that it isn't always. But I think when we go to these organizations, you realize that they need the help and the education to get there, and then sometimes a little bit of motivation from either internal or external factors. So things like AI or FedNow and RTP are creating that external motivation, and then we can come in and help to educate them. And I think it's kind of like assuming good intent. When you assume that that's what they're looking for, you have different types of conversations about how they can innovate and change their business. And I think in a lot of these companies, it's actually pretty heartwarming. You talk to people who oftentimes are actually towards the end of their career, and they see this as an opportunity to like leave the ship in a good place before the end and like get their systems in order. Versus again, when you talk to like, the 23-year-old software engineer that read a Hacker News post about ledgers and thinks that they know double accounting. Like,
hey, I worked at that company. You stop that.
Yeah, and so. Not to say like I think a lot of this is just like education, and so that's why we put out a lot of content. And like the blog post they read about how ledgers works, by the way, the odds are that we may have written it too, and then they can read that and learn about how ledgers work. But again, to what Dimitri said, it's not fintech or not fintech or small versus big. I think it's actually great. Like right now, a lot of companies are tackling really hard problems in the economy head on. And we're helping those companies, whether they're big or small, but the unifying theme is that they're addressing real problems, like real customer problems. And I think a lot of businesses these days are interchange in search of a problem, and that's not bad.
Have you guys trademarked that? That is a good term. I'm stealing that shit if it's not.
Okay, you can roll with that one. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. I mean, we see it every day. And then you talk to companies and they're being misguided towards building their debit card product. And, when they talk to their users, it's not actually what they want. And so, sometimes, of course, those products do work and that is what users want. But the majority of the time we find it's not. And so we're not focused on working with those companies usually.
So I'm curious. I mean, talking about content marketing, y'all have done, I think, one of the better jobs in the space of content marketing with the true goal of education. And I think it tends to turn into sales when you do it that way. But that's a motion that you've kind of, in a core competency that you've built internally. When I think of Dimitri Dadiomov, when I think of Matt Marcus, I don't think professional services, y'all. I don't think about, the set of Bain consultants, coming down from on high or something like that. And when I think professional services, I tend to think about that. For the record, I do love Bain, love you, Jeff Dyson and team. But that being said, this is a new motion that you all have moving. I'm curious what it's like to get that flywheel turning. Like how did this come to you? I mean, I guess how it came to you kind of already answered, so we can skip over that or just move over it quickly. But it sounds like you're getting paid to dog food your own product in some ways, which is pretty awesome. But how, like, are you having to hire different kinds of people? Are you having to build an entirely new infrastructure? Like, what does that look like to stand that up?
Yeah, I guess I'll say, I think for a lot of founders, or like think about the YC founderism's mottos, like this is actually fairly intrinsic to how you build companies in the early days. Like in the early days, when you sign a company to use your product, you do go in and help them out and, write the code. And so I think there's been this idea in like building software, building products land, that you can build the perfect PLG thing and then they figure it out and you build a great API docs, which, of course you do want great API docs and all of that. But I think for us, building this motion out and like really getting it going over the last year has been in some ways returning back to our roots and and how we deploy. And so, I think when you think we're not like the Bain types, that's probably true. But I think when we are the type of people that actually like going in and like working with companies and really like drawing out the diagrams and mapping out their funds flow and like looking at their Excel sheets and asking why they have this tab and that tab. And like, there's all these things that are fun parts of the journey. And then, to your point, you do need to bring in people who spike in that, which means it's a blend of like customer empathy and understanding, how to work with companies. They're technical people. So, we bring in for these like hands-on keyboard type roles, people who are software engineers who want to deploy with customers. So in some ways you can think of it like that Palantir forward deployed engineer type model.
Okay.
That and a lot of people really like that. It's a lot of fun. And so, not everybody wants to just be in the back writing code in the office. And so, and Dimitri, you can probably talk more to some of those things too, if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you asked how it came about. I think it's kind of worth giving credit to Chetan Pudiguntos on our board. He's a partner in Benchmark, and he spent a lot of time working with and studying companies like you mentioned Palantir, but like Workday. There's a bunch of companies that have professional services as a component of their business, and really, when you kind of put a customer first mentality, you should say, I don't really care what the accounting treatment is or how like the future investors are going to perceive this. I'm trying to solve a customer's problem, and I want to get fairly paid for it, so that I can cover my sort of bases. But I want to be able to bring a product to market and to the organization and deploy it successfully. And if that means that there's going to be some professional services, like, so be it. Like, let's not get too caught up in the like, this is PLG and this is ARR and this is ACV and like all these kind of like, words that obviously, acronyms that matter, but at the end of the day, like, you have to solve a customer's problem. So the way that it kind of came about is, to some degree, we as a company gave ourselves permission to kind of experiment and see like, what is it that customers actually want? And it turned out that some of the customers that were very, very early do not want this at all. They want to be able to kind of like get into the API docs and play around and, Slack us and ask us questions over Slack, like how does this work or whatever. And to Matt's point, that's sometimes good feedback for us. Like sometimes, we're not sometimes, oftentimes we're not right with our kind of like V1 version of something, and we'll learn about how people actually use it. But on the larger company side, the way that people want to use it is like, hey, I have this problem. Let's go like solution it together. Let's go partner up and figure out like how to solve it. And you guys are like the experts in all this API stuff. I don't understand any of it, but I know my problem in my business, and I can walk you through like the daily reality of dealing with it. Like, and what does a reconciliation of this stuff look like? And what does it look like when we don't reconcile things correctly? And like what the risk of that is. And so you kind of learn to Matt's point, like you as a founder, like learn so much more. And so you have to have, people who join the organization who are happy to be focused on like a single customer's problem, as opposed to kind of be focused on the scalability of everything at all times. Because then you obviously, you solve that problem, you generalize it, you say, hey, like this is actually a problem we see in other places. Or no, this is like super unique and we actually don't kind of care about solving it in a different way. But that's like the learning process that we have to go through.
I've always wondered, it's always seemed like every time I talk to you, it seems like there's a really tight feedback loop inside of MT, like from customer to dev to product manager, whatever it is, whatever that specific use case is. It seems as though there's a lot of communication going back to the team once it makes contact with the market. Is that because you have a very written culture? Is that because you're holding more all hands meetings than we think you're holding? Is it like what are your internal secrets to having this kind of communicative culture?
There's probably a handful of things. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. I mean, I think probably the most important thing is that like we live and breathe it every day. And so like you do need to just really be interested in what your customers say to get there. And like, I think that comes from like the early days and the way that we would like talk to them. We'd set up shared Slack channels with them. We'd look at product analytics like incessantly. So we, see when they sneeze in the product and then we know like there are all these little things. But, like today, we have like obviously the system of like Slack channels, internal and external, and like everything gets posted out. So we're very much like a push information into the company culture, which I think helps being hybrid. So information is there and it's accessible. Sometimes it can be a lot. There are processes, and like these aren't perfect. We're working on them around like surfacing feedback from the field. So like all of our sales engineers, CSM, support people, they'll log every task that they get from the field just as they get them. And then every other week we get all the PMs in a room and we just go through everything that we've heard to make sure that like every gap, everything that we're not covered, we're hearing, if we didn't capture it already, like when the messages were coming in real time. And so I think that feedback loop helps. Like I expect the PMs go and talk to customers. Like we don't have superfluous roles like user researchers. That's what the PM should do. And so, and then the engineers get on customer calls. So if you're a customer, you've probably talked to one of our engineers before, whether they're building something new or helping you out with the bank issue or whatever it is. So, and I think that's really important. Like, I don't think engineers should be shielded from the field. It might be less efficient, so to speak, but it is important to me that the engineers get direct customer exposure because I think it helps them build user empathy and understand better what they're building and ultimately build better products.
He's got nothing. I love just waiting a second to see if Dimitri reacts. No, I love that, Matt. That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like, it's one of those things that's like really easy to talk about, right? But it sounds like it's a whole bunch of lead bullets, no silver bullet at the end of the day sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
It's just a daily grind.
Every day, yeah.
They're just the daily grind, grind. Well, speaking of not the daily grind, speaking of something wildly exciting that is coming up, transfer. So we talked a little bit about your content marketing prowess, and y'all have done a wonderful job of writing, of putting things out in the world, and improving SEO ranking and everything else. But transfer is a whole different level, I think, you could call it content marketing, call it community building, call it, whatever you want to call it. I call it exciting. So let's hear a little bit about what this year's transfer has in store, why you started transfer. Just give us the high level, and then we'll get into some of the specifics.
Well, so just to the point that we're just talking about, a huge part of how we learn about the problems and how our customers interact with us is kind of just discussing these like daily problems and understanding like what they're trying to build and where they're trying to go. And there's definitely this community of payment nerds that is interested in this stuff and is solving very similar problems across different companies. And so last year we started our kind of user conference. It's a one-day event. It's in San Francisco. It happened in May last year. Basically, we brought people together to say, hey, we're going to have like the best practices and the best examples and case studies of what we've seen across this set of problems, come and speak and kind of do panels and things like that. So we had our favorite MCs, Ben and David from Acquired, MC'd last year. They're going to do it again this year. And we basically go through a whole day. We bring in some very exciting speakers. This year we've got speakers ranging from people from some of the companies that we work with and that we look up to, and that like basically have problems that they're kind of like walking through how they're solving it. We're going to do some product demos that Matt and team are working on. And then all the way to, we're going to have Joe Montana do a fireside chat talking about just how to build winning teams, how learnings from that. So it's pretty exciting. We're bringing in, it's a combination of like the banking community. We'll have John Sheena from JP Morgan. We'll have folks from companies, both from the finance and tech side. So we'll have like CTOs and product leaders, as well as CFOs and CEOs and stuff like that. So that's basically a one-day event. It's in San Francisco, and then we have food trucks and dinners and things like that to close it out.
Wouldn't be an SF event if you didn't have a food truck outside, right? That's not how it works. How much you call it a user conference, and I'm not a user, and I can't go this year because of scheduling, but I wanted to go last year. I wanted to go this year. I'm not a user. How much is it, for folks that are paying an MT bill at the end of the month, or how much is it for the rest of the community? Because it seems like something that the broader world could learn a lot from if they're working with Modern Treasury or not.
Yeah, totally. And when I say user, I mean that in the very general term. But like, hopefully, we hope you someday be a user of Modern Treasury. We hope our products get to the point where they're useful for the day-to-day life of various companies and organizations and so on. So it's people who are curious about this area Some of them are currently, paying customers of Modern Treasury, but that's by no means the majority of the audience. And certainly there's people who we're inviting and we're kind of proactively trying to work with, but there's a lot of people who are just kind of curious about it. And the event is, free. You can register online. It's also live streamed, so you can watch just like the panel that's interesting to you. So we'll have, panels specific to big companies or specific to startups or specific to like reconciliation, AI and stuff. So all of that is going to be kind of available as like a one-off, piece as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
Just as one quick example, FedNow is something we talked about. A lot of people don't know much about it, how it works, the state of it, all of that. So we'll have somebody from the Fed for the second year in a row coming in to talk about that in a fireside chat. So I think it's content like that, or like Dimitri mentioned, how people have scaled their ledgering systems, how people are thinking about banking in today's world. There's a lot of content that I think anybody that moves money probably is interested in, even if they're not using MT, or if they're on the banking side of the world. What are other people, or how are corporates thinking about it? Hopefully they get some more perspective from the people up on stage.
The question that people want to know: who's interviewing Joe Montana?
Ben and David.
No shit, really? Oh, dude, God, those guys from where they came, like, I don't, how long have they been doing it? Almost like a decade now, or something. Like, it's been going a lot longer than I realized. I feel like
9 years or something. Yeah, I think it started in 2015, if I remember right.
Yeah. All right, fine. Ben and David, you have earned the right to interview Joe Montana on top of Jensen Wang and everybody else that you guys have interviewed recently. Shout outs to Acquired, shout outs to Ben and David, and shout outs to the new child in that family. That's a very insider reference, and if you listen to the podcast, you'll get it. Anyway, sounds fascinating. What are the pieces out? So in terms of everything else we've talked about, like the one other thing I just have like written down here, don't forget to ask about AI. I wrote it in big all caps at the bottom. So I guess there's just a broad question for me in terms of the way that you two, and I think we can kind of close on this because I know you guys have hard stops coming up. What are you most excited about or most skeptical of in terms of the use of Gen AI in fintech? And I think I've asked you this question before, Dimitri, but I'm just going to keep fucking asking you, like at least once every 6 months when I have you on the show or whatever it is. But I'm curious from both of your perspectives. And you can take it either direction, excitement or, uncertainty.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're seeing a few things. Like AI is going to get companies to rethink their infrastructure. And these are companies that might not do it otherwise. So it's an opportunity for them to modernize, like get to real-time payments and, improve processes that may or may not be related to AI, like reconciliation, but we're just seeing it create that reason for them. I think AI has a lot within there, and when people hear AI right now, they think ChatGPT. It's obviously a lot more than that, but I do think you need some healthy level of optimism in the rate of increase or the rate of improvement around large language models and Gen AI. Like when we think about even just how much ChatGPT and the different GPT models have improved, it's pretty tremendous. And so I think you suspend disbelief, like look at how you can apply it in your products, and that's what we're doing. In some cases, like force your engineers to only use that, because sometimes if you don't create that constraint, they'll go back to old techniques and then they won't discover ways that actually could help you with various workflows, and then apply it in the right places and apply it the way your users expect. Like I mentioned, like we believe it needs to be applied responsibly and like not in the driver's seat, but more of a co-pilot providing suggestions. I think so. I'm not bullish if there are companies that like misapply things to every solution. I don't think everybody needs like a little, like generic co-pilot in the bottom corner, like the thing that searches everything in your app using AI. Some of those will be useful, but I think people will waste their time building a lot of features that none of their users want just to like get the AI feature. And so I think if you think from like first principles, or what are the workflows or problems my users have, and like, does this new tool help you solve that? That's where most of the exciting innovation will happen. And we should, we and like other companies should try to use it there, because that's what people are interested in right now. And it does create the opportunity to build new stuff.
All right, so Matt's not bullish on the future of the return of the Microsoft paperclip. You're not bullish on the return of Clippy across all platforms. Okay.
No.
Fair enough. Dimitri, what are you thinking?
Embedded Clippy as a service.
Embedded Clippy as a service, exactly. Matt's trying to save the world from all of this.
I think it's a company. It's probably a company out there somewhere that can be described as that.
Million% sure that actually exists.
I think, the thing that's where my mind went when you asked this question is like, really at the end of the day, like what people will say, oh, AI is so powerful because it can collapse workflow. Like that's the thing you keep hearing now is like in the SaaS world, it's like you're collapsing workflow. Like what does that actually mean? Like that actually just means that you've got a bunch of really bad UI and really bad systems that were originally built like probably a long time ago. And now you've got people who are like having to use them like every day, right? So we did some research and we looked at mid-sized companies. They're companies, I believe, between 500 and 5,000 people. And we asked them like what tools do they use in their payment ops like world, in the finance world, and they all use an average of 9.5 systems. Now that's 9.5 things that you log in and out of. That's like spreadsheets and bank portals and software systems like the Bill.coms of the world. And so like to combine all of that and you like when you think about reconciliation, you got to reconcile 9 things now between all that. So I think that and it causes all sorts of problems, and not just problems like, oh, I can't reconcile things like in real time or what have you. It also causes problems because like just at a very human level, like I remember speaking with somebody who was interviewing to join MT and they'd started their career kind of in this like rotation program, doing a lot of finance ops type stuff. And I remember this person pointing out to me that like at the end of the quarter falls on Memorial Day and Thanksgiving and Christmas. And like, it's like all the like worst time sort of to go, nobody really wants to be going and doing this, like taking CSV imports and exports out of like 9 different systems to try to like match that up, like at the time when like your family is, getting together for the turkey roast or what have you. And so that's the thing that I think is, like the promise of AI, like is actually like when we say collapse workflow, it's like, can we connect all these things and make computers do the things that we kind of want them to do? And then we built a bunch of really bad UI, and now we're stuck in like filling out forms and copy pasting things and losing like what we copy pasted, and then somebody else in that company has to like uncopy paste it and like figure out like where it came from originally. And like that's, as ridiculous as that sounds, that is like the daily reality for like millions of people because of like bad software that we built. And like this, it starts with like bank statements and like that don't describe anything. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, well now I got to like ingest it and put it into some system that is like allegedly describing my business and is doing accounting. And by the way, like we're recording this April 16th, like tax day is coming, and I got to like get this stuff done by a certain date. So now you have like urgency to this. And so I think that's like the human processes that are sort of like the human experience sort of behind it. And I think that the promise of AI done really well is like, can we have some agent that, first of all, can we teach an agent to use our own shitty UI? Like, is that a problem that computer science can solve? Like, I think you could probably solve it, but basically, can we connect into all the different databases and applications and so on, and do the job instead of make me like do the job, right? It's like if I'm going to join a finance team, I want to be doing strategic stuff. Like I want to think about like our cost structure and what should we invest in and like that sort of thing. I don't want to be doing like data munging in a CSV, trying to be like, oh my God, this comma separated thing is not separated enough, so I got to do it by hand now. Like that is, that's kind of like the day-to-day experience a lot of people have, and I think we can do better, basically. So I think that if AI really works, an optimistic view is we're not going to create like new UI that's bad. We will make UI that can kind of take over some of the old stuff that we've had, that we have to deal with.
That I think is an inspiring note to end on. Thank both of you. I will link to transfer and everything else that we talked about in the show notes. Matt, and I think everyone at this point except for me has mentioned ChatGPT on this specific podcast. So Neil Brennan, one of my favorite stand-up comedians, opened his most recent special by asking ChatGPT how to open it. And I knew that we would kind of come to this point in the podcast, so I've decided to ask ChatGPT based on the context of having a fintech-centric, fintech nerd listening podcast, how you would end a fintech nerd podcast. So what it has given to me in terms of a sign-off is as follows, and then we will cut, and I love you guys. Good night and good luck, fintech nerds. That's it. There we go. Bye.